Good day. This is Brother Medina for Tuesday, Seventh-day Adventist, and please let us start with a word of prayer. Gracious, loving Father, be with us and bless us with your Holy Spirit, that we may speak the truth and nothing but the truth for your glory's sake and for the salvation of people. Through the truths of Jesus Christ, the plan of salvation, we pray. Amen. Well, we are continuing our discussion from last week. We are talking about the flight of freedom. The flight of freedom. And we know that today there is a terrible assault on the freedoms of man. And this terrible assault is taking place all over the world. Just this past week in the United Kingdom, a new bill was brought forward. And this bill aims to ban all far-right content. Yes, my dear people. Now, you know, these politicians have divided people and their beliefs into different camps. So you have far-right, far-left, you have the left, you have the right, you have the moderate, you have the center-right, the center-left, all sorts of silly terms, just to categorize people and their political and social beliefs. So they are telling people that those who are far right in their beliefs, if they were to look and receive information from the internet, information that is far right information, far right content, they can be jailed for up to 15 years. Yes, my dear people. Do you see what is going on? They are now actually jailing you, or I should say, they want to jail people for the content that they believe, for the content of their belief. There was a day that wouldn't matter, but now they are saying that if you stumble upon it on the internet, that is not a charge. If you look at it once for curiosity, it's not a charge. But if they find that you're constantly looking at far-right concepts, they can jail you for the content that you are looking at. They are actually telling you what you can see and what you cannot see now. This is how far governments are going. Our freedoms are fleeing away. And even in Germany, once the land of Protestantism and the land of liberty of conscience, things have gotten so bad that if you say something against the vast amount of Muslim immigration coming into Germany, if you speak against it, they can jail you. Yes, my dear people. You even have cases in England and Germany where Muslims do damage to people, but Muslims that are immigrants, and people begin to speak against it, attacking what the Muslims did. And do you know the police have actually arrested those people who were saying those things? Yes, my dear people. So they don't even want you to comment. This is how far things have gone. But you see, you ask yourself the question, what is really going on? You see, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Instagram, and all these various information giving and information securing and sharing organizations are now flexing their muscles and removing content that they disagree with, because there is a current assault against what they would call right-leaning teachings, or as in America they call it conservative teachings. They don't like conservative teachings. They don't want conservative teachings. All this is evil angels assaulting people as they make their final attack and prepare to attack those who are to preach the final message upon the face of this earth. But we are seeing signs of what is coming in these things. Now, had society been learned in the Bible, had society been accustomed to Bible reading, had politicians and others accepted what was said in the Bible, these things could never happen. Yes, my dear people. Because in the Bible, we were already warned of various means of taking away people's freedoms. And it was all presented as something not very good. Not good at all. If we look at the examples in Daniel, because the prophecies of Daniel are prophecies that relates to things that would have happened way down to the end. So it would have happened from all the time of Daniel way down to the end. That's what it was all about. However, we find that God gave information even in the time of Daniel to help us understand things that were acceptable with regards to freedoms and things that were not acceptable. If we take a little example, we start with Daniel chapter 2, and you would see the concept of forced speech. Forced speech. Now, you're supposed to have freedom of speech. And in this freedom of speech, you can say what you want once you do not destroy a person by your words. But you have forced speech expressed here in Daniel chapter 2. Now, in Canada and certain parts of the United States, they are now forcing you to say what you don't want to say. So that if a person claims, a big man, maybe 60 years old, claims that he's a little woman or a little child, and you must call him by that little child, and you refuse, the law is stating that it is wrong for you to refuse. There is a professor in Canada who says the whole idea of gender, where people are changing what they think is their genders and calling them by different genders apart from masculine and feminine, he said that that was wrong. And he explained how it was wrong. Do you know they removed him from his position, a professor in a university? And now laws have been passed that tells you if somebody wants to call themselves by whatever gender, you should call them that too. Because if you refuse, you will be charged. So they're forcing your speech. Now, had they read certain things in the Bible, they would know that it is wrong to do this. You cannot fight against freedom of conscience and be right. In Daniel chapter 2, let's look at the example of forced speech right here. You know the example when we read from verse 3, where Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and he did not remember what he dreamed, but he wanted to understand it. So he had a whole set of officials that used to give him counsel based upon whatever he dreamed or whatever they thought were right. We're told in verse 3, "And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show thee the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill, or a hill where you throw rubbish and defecation and so on." Verse 6, But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of a certain that you would gain the time, because you see the thing is gone from me. But if you would not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For you have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me, till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered him before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asked such things of any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king require it, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they saw Daniel and his fellows to be slain. End of quote. You see, because Daniel was also a wise man, and the 3 Hebrew boys with him were also categorized as wise men in the courts of Babylon. But they were wise in the word of God, through the word of God, not wise by astrology and Chaldean philosophy, which was called a type of nationalistic philosophy. Therefore those people were called Chaldeans, because the Babylonians were called Chaldeans in race. So you find that the king is actually forcing them to tell him his dream and the interpretation. Now we can understand that these people were crooks and deceivers and lying to the king, and now it came clearly before everyone that they had no special powers to interpret dreams and so on. They were just giving their own speculations, and they could have put the nation to ruin by their own speculations as advice. So what has happened here? The king forced them on the basis of the penalty of death. We know it is forced because here you have the penalty of death hanging over their heads if they were not able to say it. And what happened? God used Daniel to give the king an understanding of exactly what he had forgotten in his dream, therefore telling him the content of his dream and telling him the interpretation thereof. Yes, my dear people. And God revealed that to Daniel by miracle. Yes, my dear people. But what does this show us? All the king could have done was to fire the lot of them. Fire all the wise men of Babylon, because they were charlatans. They were not genuine. But you put in a death penalty upon them if they can't tell you a dream. This is forced speech. You're forcing them to say something they just don't know and that they couldn't tell. But the fact that God used Daniel and by revelation showed Daniel what the king dreamt, and the interpretation of the dream clearly tells us that this also saved the lives of those wise men. But it clearly tells us that God does not favor forced speech. Yes, my dear people, he does not favor forced speech. Also, in the book of Daniel, there is clear account that God does not favor the enforcement of religion. Yes, my dear people. And very soon, all over the world, religion will be enforced. That is coming soon, according to Bible prophecy. But God already has it there in Daniel, telling us that religion should never be forced upon a person. A person must not be forced to serve the God of a religion or the God of somebody. They must have conviction from God if it is really true. And if they don't, they're not supposed to force. But you find in Islam, they are forced by force of arms, according to teachings coming from their various writings. Whereby if even if you leave the religion and join Christianity, you are deserving of death. So people are being forced to follow certain teachings. So here we are actually told in the Bible that this thing of forcing religion, the enforcement of religion, is wrong. And Daniel chapter 3 clearly shows us this. Now we know something that happened here. Nebuchadnezzar made a huge statue, and he called everybody everywhere to come and worship this statue. This statue was a symbol of the nation of Babylon, and the nation of Babylon was symbolized as the king, and that king and nation of Babylon was God. A divine spirit pervaded them all, and they were God. That was the teaching. So here the Hebrew boys were called to worship this thing. So as the Bible tells us, that the 3 Hebrew boys refused. And let's see what happens. Let's read from verse 8 of Daniel chapter 3. We are told, I quote, "Wherefore at the time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, will fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worship it, that he shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up." Did you see that, my dear people? But it continues. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they brought these men before the king. This king had a problem with rage, fury, get angry very quick if people don't obey his will. So the first time you want to force speech, now you want to enforce religion. It goes on. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if you be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if you worship not, you shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? So this is what Nebuchadnezzar told them. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. We're not going to answer you as if we are very careful to answer you in this matter. Explain what we have to tell you here. That's what they say. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Verse 19 tells us, observe what we are being told here. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. We can stop here. And you know the story. They bind them, cast them into the furnace, and here is what happened. A fourth person appeared in the furnace, and his image was like one that Daniel had described to Nebuchadnezzar before, like the Son of Man, as he said. And the ropes on the hands of the captives were burnt out, but the fire did not even singe a hair. A miracle was done, and the king was defeated. And the Hebrew boys walked up and down in the fire until the king told them to come out. The king was shocked because he said he saw a fourth person walking in the fire, like Daniel had described him. And he called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego out of the fire. What does this show us? It shows us that God is against enforcing your religion. You cannot enforce your religion upon a person. It is wrong. And you see, if the state would remember these things, that religious liberty will be preserved. Free speech will be preserved. The freedoms of men will be preserved. And so, clearly we see here that God is against enforcing your religion upon a person. But that's not all. The king now, when he understood that God had defeated his hand, did another thing that was wrong, just because he didn't understand. And this was the protection of religion. The state is not to protect a religion. You protect people. You protect their religious freedoms, but you do not protect a religion. This is what blasphemy laws does. Blasphemy laws seek to protect a religion. So any laws with the intent of protecting a religion is wrong. Leave religion to the people and let God protect his own religion. If he is God, he ought to be able to do this. So here is what Nebuchadnezzar did. And we go to Daniel chapter 3, 28 and 29. Here is what we are told. I quote, "Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who had sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree," now here is the king, "therefore I make a decree, that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort." End of quote. Did you see that? So what we have here is the king now telling the people, we're going to put penalty upon you if you say anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In other words, you're now protecting the religion. What if the person doesn't believe? What if the person doesn't understand? But yet still you are saying you're going to put penalty upon the people if they say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These are blasphemy laws, and this also is wrong. So God is not only against forced speech, he is against the enforcement of religion, and he is against blasphemy laws or the protection of religion by the state. Let God protect his own religion. Yes, my dear people, and this is what we are seeing here. But this is not all. Even in the book of Daniel again, we are clearly told another thing with regards to religion that God is against. And this takes us to Daniel chapter 6. Now, if we look at verse 5 to verse 13, here is what we are told. I quote, "Then said these men we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. Now what's going on here? A new regime is in power many years later. A new regime. This time it is the Medes and the Persians. But Daniel holds a very high position in government. He's just the next man under the king. Yes, my dear people. But what happens here is that there are other presidents below Daniel that are jealous of his position, and they want power. So they try to find a means to get rid of Daniel. And all they can find to get rid of Daniel is his faithful service to God. Do you see how the carnal mind is? Do you see how people think? You hate a person because of their faithful service to God. There are people who do this, not knowing that the wrath of God will come upon them. Now let's read what happened here in verse 6. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said thus unto him, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes, the counselors and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, says thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Did you see that? They give the impression that every one of the governors and everybody was agreeing to this, which would include Daniel. And they knew they were lying. But look at what they did. It goes on. Verse 8. Now, O king, establish a decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed according to the laws of the Medes and the Persians, which alter it not. So once the Medes and the Persians had signed the law couldn't change. The law had to stay as a law that governed the kingdom. It could not change. It was like an eternal law. Yes, my dear people. Now verse 9 tells us, wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now when Daniel knew the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in his chamber towards Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before God as he did aforetime. So Daniel knew what they had done. He knew they had set a trap for him. But what did he do? Did he change? Did he pray in private? No, he didn't. He went and he prayed openly. Yes, my dear people. And what happened? These men went and complained to the king, and the king took Daniel and threw Daniel into the lion's den. But the king recognized that he was tricked. So what do we have here? We have again this whole idea of denying people their religious liberty, prohibition of religion. Daniel's religious practice was prohibited. And so here is an attack on the free exercise of religion by the prohibition of religion. And God is against government passing laws to prohibit religious exercise, to prohibit religious practice. God is against that. Because when Daniel was cast into this lion's den, the lions did not eat him. God protected him. Yes, my dear people. Clearly showing us that God is against attacking a person's free exercise of religion by the prohibition of religion. Yes, my dear people. All these are already written in the Bible. It's there. And yet still, if politicians would read these things and get these things in their mind, they would make more just laws and not oppress the people. And this is what is not happening today. They are not making proper laws. And they are oppressing the people with false laws and false teachings and false social, political, communist teachings as they push to form the world for the New World Order. But we let you see that God is against this. And in closing, one more example here is clear. When Peter and John was captured for preaching the gospel, they were put in prison. And what happened? We are told that God sent his angel and released them and sent them right back in the temple and tell them, preach. What does this tell us? That God is against the prohibition of the free exercise of religion. God is against prohibiting people preaching the truth. So when men say no, God, it is told to us, it is better if we obey God rather than man. We ought to obey God rather than man. That's what we are told. And so, may God bless you as you seek to recognize these freedoms are not supposed to be violated, but they're supposed to stand forever. So, if anyone wants this program, call us at 625-0446. 625-0446 will give you this program plus others that went before. And may God bless you until we meet again in Jesus'